I would like to introduce everyone to Geoff Norby. Geoff is the owner of Global Accent Translation Services. And it's we had an opportunity to talk earlier this week and last week. And I think the information that Geoff is going to share with us just fits right into what we're trying to accomplish in Northern Colorado, that being a much more global region of the country, of the world. And Geoff's services really integrate quite well with virtually any company in the world that is trying to do international business. So, Geoff, take it away. And I told him, by the way, that this was very informal, so be prepared for lots of Q&A.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Janet. I'm really excited to be able to chat with everybody today. I've been looking forward to it. I heard it was a happy hour, so I got my Northern Colorado beer.
Nice.
If you can,
excellent.
The Northern Colorado brewery you might have heard of, called Odell's.
Maybe heard of them, yeah.
So I tried to go all Northern Colorado tonight. But yeah, I'm excited to talk. Really, as I was kind of looking through the talking points that I sent over, I realized, it's kind of a lot about us and a lot about me. So what I wanted to say before I started is just, anything that we can start to chat about that, maybe my perspective is helpful to you as far as linguistics or international business, let's definitely kind of try to angle it that way so that it's kind of, helpful to everybody and not just this is what we do. So, but I'll kind of start there. I'll give you an idea of my background and the background of my company, where we came from and where we are today. And yeah, and then we can just chat kind of, globalization or linguistics or whatever's on you guys' minds. So yeah, with that in mind, and feel free to stop me at any moment. I can take a breather and we can talk. Okay, good. Perfect. So yeah, I thought I'd just start off with, so my company is called Global Accent. My name is Geoff Norby. I actually did not found the company. It was started by a woman named Amy Cardell back in 1991. But she was kind of doing something a lot different. And when I took it over from her in 2006, I took it in a much different direction. It was a really small company. It was kind of a one-woman show, and she was more involved in the day-to-day translation and interpreting and things like that. And I eventually kind of took it in more of a direction of project management of our linguists. So from 2006, when I took over, we really started to focus on really one major industry, which I will get to within the world of translation. But yeah, so we actually started in 1991. I've been the owner since 2006. And then what we do now is, as you could guess, we translate. We take things from one language and put it into another. That's the simplest way to put it. It gets super duper complicated somehow along the way, but that's the general idea. Our company specifically, within the world of translation, there are a lot of specific, tasks and industries and things that you can do. So, the big two in the world of linguistics is interpretation and translation. And a lot of people who aren't in our industry might not know the difference, but interpretation is anytime that you're on site or on a video call and you're doing it in real time. These interpreters have always amazed me because that is not me at all. And it's really spectacular to watch a good interpreter work. Our company has always been about the written word. And, our job is really that focus on read it, reread it, edit it, proofread it, reread it, quality assurance, make sure that what we're giving to our client is something that they can really trust and believe in. Obviously, our industry is kind of built on trust because, a lot of times neither you nor I know what you wrote is being portrayed accurately in Korean. So, you know, we have to have a process in place that we know will be effective to get it there. And so, you know, we have to have, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, you know, I think we've all faced directions to putting something together, or, you know, trying to follow directions on something that is produced in a different country. And, you know, you immediately go, oh my gosh, this is, you know, something is wrong here. We can all sense it and all feel it. So, you know, this, maybe you'll get to this, but, you know, when you're doing the translation, do you need to have more of an understanding of what's being done or said, or you know, like assembly instructions, you know, like, do you really need, do you try and get people with that kind of background, or is it, you know, just, no, we're just straight translation, you know, garbage in, garbage out, you know, kind of thing, you know what I mean?
I think you're asking like translation versus transcreation.
Maybe that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
So great question, and we can definitely talk transcreation as well. I think you know, subject matter specialists are really important. You know, if you're talking about you know, we've got some clients in the outdoor gear industry, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit. That's something we focus on. And, you know, these outdoor gear translations, I think, are a good example of what you're talking about, Ken. You know, we're talking about very technically specific descriptions of products, but it's still marketing. You know, it's still like, you know, hey, we're a cool company, buy our stuff. And so you've got to really find the right person who can, you know, get that technical ability across, but also make it so it just doesn't sound like, you know, like Google Translate void of personality, all that kind of stuff. Right. And as Allison mentioned, that's where, you know, transcreation comes in as well. And, you know, for those of you that maybe don't have a background with that, transcreation is where, so translation is generally going to be a very literal A to B. And, you know, as you know, with languages, there's never just A to B. You've got, you know, you've got cultures to cross, but it's more of an algebra problem than transcreation is. And transcreation is where you're going to read, say, maybe an advertisement or some sort of branding materials, and then you can deviate from that source. You're just going to try to get that point across, get that imagery across, and that kind of thing. And transcreation is really hard because it's a real personal thing. You know, it's you basically have to be in marketing in order to do it. You have to be able to market somebody else's brand or company. But yeah, so to get back to what you're saying, I think, you know, finding subject matter specialists is really important. And for us, we're in two major industries. One is market research and one is outdoor products and gear. And we've developed translation teams separately for each one, because our clients are kind of looking for something specific for each thing. And those are two different things.
Right. And so those folks who are in the outdoor gear arena, you know, kind of get it, right? You know, whatever it is, pushing you know, a running stroller or a backpack that, you know, has, you know, different descriptions on use or something like that. I mean, it definitely comes off poorly when the translation or whatever you want to call it isn't good. It doesn't do things for your company. Right?
Absolutely. And go ahead.
If you were, so you're talking about the outdoor gear. So let's take a company like REI.
Yeah.
If they were to come to you and say, okay, this is this new marketing pitch that we have, and we've got these 12 countries that we're going to be pushing, is that the kind of client that you would take on and try to create the marketing materials in the, not only in the right language, but in the right spirit of the culture that it's going to be viewed in?
Absolutely. Yeah. if you get a chance, let them know that is the project we are waiting for. So yeah, I definitely, that's a great example. You know, we have a tent backpacking, you know, outdoor gear clothing company that we work with all the time, and they've got, you know, 7, 8, 9 major languages that they like to market their materials in. And so that's exactly what we do. We you know, we have these teams put together that, and actually one thing that was really cool, I was going to say, is when we kind of openly, you know, said out loud to the public that outdoor gear, outdoor products is a new industry that we're trying to get ourselves into, we actually had a lot of translators find us and say, this is a really cool idea, I want to be a part of it. And they would send us their information. And so our outdoor gear translation teams actually kind of started to build themselves a little bit. When
Interesting.
people found out what we were doing, they were like, man, I want to, you know, I'd love to be translating, you know, tent descriptions rather than, you know, really dry, you know, Belgian legal requirement documents. You know, sign me up for the tents. So
I suppose that there is actually a worldwide community of people, in a sense, you know, I mean, they probably read common information. They might be out there climbing with each other, doing competitions.
Right.
You know, I mean, so after a while, that turns into a community of people who are internationally recognized. And so I could see that a niche like that could be pretty powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, that's exactly right. And going back to what Ken said a little bit ago, you know, if you're say you're selling this tent as some, you know, technically amazing product, and you're very proud of all the effort you put into everything, you know, in that tent is perfect, it's lightweight, it's durable, all these things, but then your translation is like Google Translate on the tag or something, you know, and you're trying to send that to Germany and have people buy it, the Germans would be the first ones to say, no thanks, you know, this doesn't look reliable to me. And so,
well, and we've all been on the receiving end of that with products from Asia, but I can't imagine how much more people feel in other countries, because the US marketing presence is so huge that we just sort of ignore the needs of all the other countries. We just blast it out.
Is that just in marketing, or no, never mind.
right.
No, everywhere else we're good. I mean, politics are fine. Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of a great little what we do. I think that got into some good specifics there, and we already started talking about it. But the next thing I was going to do is in industries we specialize in. We talked about the outdoor gear. Obviously, you know, it's near and dear to my heart because I'm an outdoor guy, and you know, just being in Fort Collins, we've had some of these international outdoor companies come find us, you know, Colorado based or whatever. And then, you know, we kind of started to build on that and market ourselves. We've done a booth at the Outdoor Retailer Show down in Denver multiple years. And we're next year going to the German one, which should be a lot of fun. It's kind of the German version of the Outdoor Retailer on the Bodensee. So outdoor industry is great. You know, it's still a small and growing percentage of our overall population because of our overall revenue. The main industry we work in is the market research world, and it's not quite as exciting, you know, but it is. There's a lot of content to translate when it comes to companies, you know, doing market research and trying to find out how to connect with consumers with their you know, products and services that they have. And so to kind of get a little more specific on that and give you guys a better idea, you know, you could kind of take any product or service at this point. You know, all these companies do market research, all these big international companies. And so what they might do is, you know, they've got a new computer or set of tires or software program or, you know, whatever it might be. And they're looking to figure out, you know, why or how to get people in Belgium or Japan or Sweden, or you name it, to buy their product. And if they've already bought it, figure out what they think about it, and what they like and don't like. So it's really surveys. Like the bread and butter of those programs and those projects are consumer surveys and consumer feedback. And we generally spend most of our time on the outgoing part. So the client will write the survey and we'll translate it. We will localize it for the culture and the audience that they're looking for, make sure it fits in. We even do a lot of US English to UK English, which are always kind of fun ones, or Australia, or even India, English for India. So that's kind of what we do. We don't do as much on the getting the feedback. Sometimes we do, but a lot of the surveys we work with are closed end, meaning they never have to get the feedback in language. It will just come back to them with selected responses between response 1 through 4, 1 through 8. So we do a lot of closed end. It's called quantitative market research, if you're familiar with quantitative versus qualitative. We do also, so the quantitative is going to be the big survey with a lot of people responding. The qualitative is going to be more one-on-one or focus group. The one-on-one is called an in-depth interview or an IDI. Those are always fascinating because you're just, that one, it's all about filtering down to find the right person that your company really cares about their opinion. Maybe it's somebody who always buys your jeans, or always, they're like those Apple fanatics. Maybe Apple is looking for an Apple fanatic to see, what they think of the headphones or the iMac or whatever it might be. And so with the qualitative part, you're getting very nuanced information. It's very specific to 1 to 6 people. Whereas quantitative is huge. You might get 1,000 opinions, but it's all, smushed into a percentage or a number.
I suppose
So-
that the qualitative tends more towards needing to have reverse translation. It'll be in context, in culture, in language, and you
Exactly.
need to know those things. It's not just pick one from a list of 5 kind of answers.
Yeah. And that's a real trick for, I think budgeting is a real problem for a lot of international qualitative type of projects, because, you can run a quantitative survey pretty cheaply where, we translate it and that's it. Whereas qualitative, you might have to translate and transcribe 6 to 8 hours of people talking. And the thing with transcription is it takes about 4 to 6 minutes to transcribe 1 minute of audio text, and then from there you have to translate that. So it's way more expensive than it sounds, and a lot of times cost prohibitive. But the whole point was getting feedback from people in Paris and Frankfurt. So now you got to figure out how to do it without busting your budget. So I always see clients really struggle with that aspect of it, and computer assisted translation and transcription is getting better. And I think 10 years from now that might be the answer, is something cheaper there, but it's not quite good enough yet. So I see a lot of companies struggle with international qualitative.
So your customers who come to you, are they typically English speaking customers, or are you like the going to the show in Germany kind of was oh yeah, I guess you could do it the other way too. So what would you say your percentage of English speaking customers versus not?
Yeah. So this might be surprising, but it's probably close to 100% English speaking. What I find is, at least maybe it's just the universe that Global Accent is in, but I just find English being the global language of these businesses. So even when we work with international teams, like we're working with a German backpacking company right now, and their English isn't always 100%, but they default to English with us all the time. So
Oh, sure. Okay.
yeah, definitely. I just brought in a former employee who's back with me now. She's in Belgium, and she speaks Dutch and French. So if we do run into Dutch clients, she can now hop in and speak to them in Dutch, which I think will be nice.
I guess, maybe my question was more along the lines of, what's their native, is it,
right?
Is their, native tongue or whatever, typically English, or is it something else?
Yeah. So for us, most of the time, our clients are US based, and they're looking to, kind of research the other parts of the world, which, comes in handy for me being mostly an English speaker. But so yeah, most of our clients are going to be teams of US based people or US natives, but not all the time, for sure. We do have clients whose native tongues might be something else, and like I said, they tend to almost always just default to English.
Right.
So,
and then do you find yourself more drifting because of that one segment of your business being so market research based, as being a market research provider as well, or do they come to you with, here are the exact questions and the exact answers we want?
Yeah, that is a great question. So to answer your question really quickly, I would say the latter. They basically a lot of the time they'll just send us a file. They'll say, we wrote this questionnaire, here you go, here's the languages. But a lot of times it's not that easy. So that's where it gets interesting. Either, you'll have a client who maybe doesn't have much international experience, or you'll have a client who just leans on you for additional knowledge, like this localization knowledge. But what will happen a lot of times is they'll send us something that's just not applicable for other countries or other parts of the world. And we'll have to either tell them, one thing I always use as example is the demographic question. I'll say, what is your race or ethnicity, kind of at the end of the questionnaire, the demographic section. And, it'll say Native American, African American, white, Asian American, typical things you would expect. But we've actually had people try to, ask if you're African American, the people in, Europe or Japan. It's like, well, that'd be a pretty winding route, all these things to, so, we for some countries, we will just localize to most common ethnicities of that country, and that's no big deal. We can absolutely do that. But countries like France and Germany actually have passed laws that you can't ask somebody their ethnicity in a survey. So sometimes we'll just have to tell our clients, like, we'll translate it for you if you want it, but just so you know, it's illegal to ask that question in that country. And then other localization stuff as well, which I won't bore you with, but a lot of times they'll say, what stores did you shop in, or what other products have you bought in this industry, and so they'll sometimes ask us to localize, a list of stores, a list of retailers, things like that they might have Target, Walmart, so and so, but it's going to be a completely different list in the Czech Republic. So.
Right.
So how much do you do that kind of cultural consulting for your clients? Do you do that as like a paid service? Because I can imagine it could get pretty deep and pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the market research goes, the surveys typically, they tend to be pretty straightforward, aside from a few of those examples I was just talking about.
Okay.
But there definitely is that aspect of, cultural awareness, teaching our clients what they can and can't say, those kind of things. And also, just having that knowledge and expertise on our end to help them fit better with the country and the culture that they're aiming for. We do sometimes, we'll say, we'll need to update some of this stuff. We'll have to do some research sometimes to make sure you've got this right, and charge. Yeah, and we'll charge by the hour, charge an additional fee. another demographic one that can get real hairy real fast is, you know, a very common survey question is where's your, you know, your household income fall or whatever. And, you know, if you start thinking about moving that to other countries, it's real complicated. You know, for most countries, you can't just do a straight currency conversion, for example. You know, if you're thinking about maybe a country where people typically have less income, you know, you're not going to ask them like, do you make 45,000 to 60,000 a year? If they're, you know, that's just not going to apply to very many people. So, you know, that's another thing where it can get really complicated when there's, especially when there's, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of income disparity. You know, it's very tricky to get that right so that it's actually usable info for our clients, but they typically don't think about that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, we have the benefit, I would say. One last thing on that point is, I haven't quite gotten into our process yet, and I will, but, you know, we work with translators as freelancers, and they're, you know, they're from these countries and they're in these countries and they're all over the world. And so we really do have that knowledge base that we can use to help our clients, you know, to kind of hit what they're trying to hit. You know, it's great that for China, we work with people from the mainland, you know, People's Republic of China and Taiwan and Hong Kong. And we have great relationships with these translators, so we can ask them questions, you know, like, what's applicable there? What would you recommend? Even just, you know, some of these languages like Chinese, it's like, our clients don't know if they want to do simplified or traditional characters, you know, and so we know now, but we started by talking to our translators. Hey, here's the target market, you know, what script would you use, kind of thing. And, you know, Hong Kong and Taiwan, they both use traditional characters, but we've got two separate teams because there's a lot of influence from a lot of different places, and you just want to have natives from those spots for your translation.
So do you have hundreds and hundreds of contractors scattered around the world? Is that your structure?
It is. And, you know, 1099s in January is not a fun time for us. So yeah, actually that's, I'll just jump into that real quick, a real quick overview of our setup, if that sounds good to everybody. You know, we basically have a small team of project managers that are full-time employees, 40 hours a week, and then all of our translators are basically freelancers that we work with. You know, in the big languages, we work with them almost every day. In the not so big languages, like I think we were bidding out a Tahitian project the other day, and those are people we don't work with all that often. So, but, you know, say Japanese, Chinese, French, German, some of the main ones, Spanish, you know, our translator teams, our roster is very thorough, and we have people that we work with on a near daily basis. And, you know, we know when they take their kids to soccer practice, and work with them quite regularly, know when they go on vacation. So, but yeah, so to get into our company, we've got a project manager in Lafayette. We've got a project manager in Chicago. We've got a project manager who just graduated from Colorado State and is here in Fort Collins. This is her first week on the job, so I've been training her. And then we also have a new project manager in Belgium, and that was really exciting for me. She worked for me about 9 years ago when her husband got a contract at CSU for 2 years, and they were in Fort Collins, and then they moved back to Europe, and we just stayed in contact for all this time. And she kept saying, you know, if you ever want to expand to Europe, you let me know. I'm waiting for the call. And we finally decided to do it this year. So awesome. She is now a full-time project management employee in Ghent, Belgium, and she didn't even need any training. It was great. You know, she'd already worked for us, and she actually went to work for a market research company after she left us, which is even better. So,
yeah. Well, so you'll probably have an influx now of European clients. Excellent.
That's the hope. The hope is kind of, get that foothold and kind of build from there. So
what's the size of firm that would typically come to you, to do these kind of searches?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for market research, we work with market research agencies. They team up with the big dogs, the big international companies, to help them with specific survey objectives. So it works perfectly for us because we're getting projects from all kinds of end clients that we have no contact with, but they just go through these market research companies. I would say most of them. I mean, we've got one that's basically a duo that, two people running a market research boutique, all the way up to a couple clients that are, pretty big names in the market research industry that have maybe 300 to 500 people. I would say, the majority are kind of that 50 to 100 employee range that we work with.
So I assume that you have people that come to you direct as well. Some companies come to you direct.
Yeah.
And, do you have kind of a view of, how big that end customer is that comes to you? Is it a mom and pop shop that wants to finally go global, or is it a 50 people firm that makes tents and, whatever?
Yeah, I would say as far as those direct clients go, probably I would say somewhere in the middle there, like a 50-person firm would probably be about right. When we're talking these outdoor research or outdoor industry companies, it's definitely, I would say our typical client is kind of that smaller client that's got this great idea and they're ready to go global and they want to come to us and have us help them get their name out there in the right way. So, it's generally not your Patagonias and your North Faces,
Sure.
but kind of the middle, small to middle, I think is where we're at. And yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I'm curious on going back to your translators. How do you vet them? How do you figure out if they're good at what they do? Because so much of that is on trust. And
Right.
for me, that's something I'm actively looking at because my clients are not typically English speakers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at Japanese, Korean, and Chinese, which are different tiers within the language. And I don't speak the languages. So how do I, as a business owner, know I'm getting the correct translations? And like, how do you go through with your translators and all that fun stuff on trust? How do you know they're doing what they're doing correctly?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that really gets to the key of what we do, our process that is so important, and it has to be as close to perfect as it can be. We come at it from a couple different angles. One being when we bring new people in, just researching their backgrounds, talking to them, making sure they're a good fit for what we do. We look at responsiveness and what they've worked on before, all the things you would kind of look at, I think, for any new person that you're gonna be in contact with. And then the next part is the process itself. And actually that was something I was going to touch on. I think that might have even been my next point. Is it's called the TEP process in the language industry, which is translate, edit, proofread. And for us, we have kind of a fourth one, which is our QA at the end. So basically, when we line up a project, let's say it's this tent company, and we're translating their tent descriptions, that will first go to a translator. The translator will translate everything. When they're done, they'll send it to an editor that we've lined up separately. So they're not necessarily, it's not their best friend or husband or, person down the hall. It's somebody that we've lined up independently. Now they might know each other through working for us over a certain amount of time, but it's that independence, I think, is important because, we know that both of these people are people we can count on. And then from the editor, it goes back to the translator to review the edits, give the file a final proofread, make sure everything looks okay. So that's the P. And then they send it to us, and we'll do an internal QA check or proofread as well. So, you might think if we're translating English to Korean, and we don't have any Korean speakers on staff internally, that we might not find very many things, but it's amazing what you find, because you can look at it from a different angle and you can say, well, the source text has a 32 in it, but the Korean has a 37 in it. So I'm just going to check with the translator and make sure that wasn't a mistake. It might not be, they may have worded things in a different way or something like that. But that's the kind of final QA that we do. And we almost always find things, whether it's formatting or, whatever it is. So I think the process is the most important part, but obviously having the right people to start with is key as well. And, the great thing is, once you're starting to develop a roster for a language, you'll find that person who you can count on. And after you've done X amount of projects with them, even though they're a freelancer, they're not a full-time employee, all this stuff, you just know that person is really good. And once you've got them, you can kind of use them to evaluate the new people that come in and kind of go through that. So pretty soon your translator is somebody, you could trust to watch your kids. And then your editor is, somebody else that they've said is really good. And at that point, you've got really good people working together, and you just know that, that it's something that you can trust and feel good about sending to a client.
So for me as a business owner, because I'm in a similar field, so that's why I'm like, a lot of these, I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of the stuff we're dealing with.
Awesome.
I'm listening. And for me, I like the fact that you have a checks and balances system. Because I talked with a lot of translation services, like, yeah, we just need to get it done quickly. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm like, for me, I'm spending so much time on my marketing in English, so that it can get translated correctly into another language. I don't want you doing it quickly. I want it to be as perfect as possible so that I have a good brand in another language.
Yeah, because your reputation is on the line, not Jeff's. It's your reputation.
That's very true.
So how many of them, like, yeah, we do a good job. We do it within 30 minutes. I'm like, I've been working on my own marketing. How many hours? I don't want you doing it in 30 minutes. I want it to be very professionally, because I'm doing high level sales. And I have to have that trust. I have to have that reputation.
Yeah, that's a great, I think some of that stuff, can get lost. And, it sounds like that agency is just, they're not really tailoring, what they're doing to your needs, so to speak. And, I think, you look at that quality, timing, and cost, I think are the, those three pillars that you look at. And, that's one thing I always said to a lot of our market research clients. I'm like, I used to write market research questionnaires in English before I came over into the language world. And so, I realized, like you said, I realized how long it took just to do it in English. It shouldn't take, 10 minutes to do it in the target language, where you have all these additional considerations on top of just getting the marketing and the market research text across correctly. So yeah, I think, so everything you said is just spot on. It's so important.
And for me, the checks and balances is something I don't see in other translation companies that I've been looking for. So
that's
for me,
awesome to hear.
Finally, we have the same idea, because it should be. Yeah, you can translate it, but translation isn't all there is to it. Is it translated in a way that makes sense?
Yeah.
Read correctly.
Well, and this is what's interesting with the ubiquity of Google Translate, is that you can do a first level of darn near anything and translate it into Klingon if you want to. But I think people are starting to figure out that that is such a poor first level. It's what you use when you have absolutely no alternative and you're just trying to read the label on the back of the thing that you just got from Japan. And it's like, okay, you at least get a little bit of an idea. But
Carl, I was telling Jeff the last time I was in China, I went to the Beijing Opera,
Yeah.
and they decided to translate into English the opera. And
Wow.
it wasn't supposed to be a comical opera. So they had this electronic scrolling board. I had a hard time not cracking up laughing because of the interpretation was so, the words were all English words, but when they strung them together, it was absurd. And we weren't supposed to be laughing, but we couldn't help ourselves because we realized that they didn't use Jeff's company to translate it into something that actually made sense in English.
Well, the interesting thing about that is they may have been using an opera, which was like originally in Italian or who knows what, right? And so there exists English translations that have been done, and
true,
right? So something like that, they shouldn't have to start from scratch.
Yeah. You don't want them to play telephone?
Yeah. Translating a translation of a translation.
Yeah.
It was, you're right. It was probably Italian. Then they had gotten transferred into something else, and then it came and got translated to Chinese and then into English. So, good Lord, it was like somebody threw the dictionary into a bowl and picked out words.
These translations that I see are even worse than Google Translate. So I don't know how they even get there. I'm like, I translated it, Google Translate, and it's still better than whatever this mess is.
At some point, you wonder whether they're doing it intentionally to mess with us, Really? Really?
That's why I can't do translation. I'd probably do that.
Yeah, I bet Todd would do that, but I'm not sure anybody else would.
I was telling Janet, I love a good mistranslation. That's how I get my kicks, find those really bad ones. And I keep saying I'm going to make a website. I'm sure there's one out there that's really good already, but they just kill me sometimes. So,
yeah.
But yeah, actually, so on the topic of, we're kind of talking Google Translate a little bit. I did want to kind of touch on the software and technology aspect of where we're at right now. I think a lot of people are kind of interested, because I always get that question, like, why don't I just use Google Translate, or, do you guys use Google Translate, or lots of questions about, I guess a main one I get is, do we use machines or do we use humans to translate? And, it's hard for me not to laugh, but at the same time, I totally get it, because
it's a good question.
It's a great question. Yeah. It really is. And especially the way things have been changing the last few years, it's things are changing in that direction. So anyway, long story short, I did want to kind of talk about that a little bit. I think there's two things to point out on technology and how it's affecting our industry right now. One is you've got machine translation, and Google Translate's the obvious choice there. It's a kind of an AI program that does your translation for you in an automated way. And then the other one we've got, which our company uses on a daily basis, is something called a CAT tool, CAT, and that is computer assisted translation software. So you'll see like CAT software, CAT tools, and that's where it doesn't quite do what you might think it does. And the one we use is called Trados. There are 3 or 4 kind of industry leaders out there. MemoQ is another one. I think Trados is kind of the big dog. Trados is the McDonald's of CAT tools. But that's also the, it's the one that most translators know of and work with. So that's kind of what we went with. But what it does is it creates something called a translation memory, and it's an assistance to human translation. So if we send out a project to a Japanese translator, and it's a 3,000 word survey, it's a new client, we have no existing materials for these guys. Our translator will go through, translate all 3,000 words, and Trados will separate out what they translated into something called translation units. And the translation unit is kind of big, because Japanese is a great example. You can't just go word for word like, oh, that's going to match up, that's going to match up. So it's going to be like sentences or separated phrases, you know, things that you can pick at. Like in a survey, it might be the question and then the responses individually. And so, and then maybe some interviewer instructions or respondent instructions like, you know, please only select one answer or things like that. That please only select one answer is a good example of the translation unit. And so the translator finishes up, they send it back to us, we run it through Trados, and Trados says, okay, of those 3,000 words now, I've separated it all into translation units, and this English equals this Japanese, and it'll save it for next time. So the next time we get a survey from that client, we run it through Trados at the beginning, and Trados will tell us, hey, last time you translated please select one response as this. And then it will be there for our translator to review. They can implement it. They can look at the context around it, and they can say, yep, that still fits, or no, it actually changes because now you're addressing 10 people instead of one person, or whatever the case may be. So you can use that as a starting point. It's been saved into what's called a translation memory. And Trados is great because let's say you're working on surveys for the same client all the time. You know, of those 3,000 word surveys, they might start to recycle questions, or, you know, like we talked about those demographic questions, or, you know, what's your age, what's your gender, all those kind of things that are just typical. It'll start to save those. And then when you get a new project in, Trados will tell you, okay, it's a 3,000 word survey. 600 of those words we've identified as completely translated in the past. And that is a huge time savings for our translator, and also helps with consistency. You know, maybe this time we can't work with the same translator because they're not available, and we can send them that translation memory, and they can see, hey, on the last survey we translated please select all that apply this way. And, you know, that kind of stuff can make a difference in a survey, how a respondent looks at something, how they respond to something, and consistency is key on those things. So so that's kind of how the CAT tools come in. They don't translate anything, but they do really help us to know what we've done in the past, helps with timing and consistency. So that's a quick, you know, machine translation is getting there in certain respects, and we could, you know, I'm glad to talk about that stuff too. CAT tools are a little more applicable to what we do, but everybody wants to talk machine translation, you know, because that's the hot, exciting thing. But at least for, you know, surveys and marketing, machine translation is not there yet. For something like, translating legal notices for patents, you know, where they reuse the same sentence and have been since 1974. If you know, you could use a CAT tool on that, and basically it translates itself at a certain point. So, you know, it kind of depends. It depends on your intended audience and your context. So
Geoff, I did a quick Google on websites for bad translations, and this is an outdoor sign, so it's applicable to your folks who do the camping and
perfect
and tent stuff. Anyway, it says beware of invisibility. So I don't know why that sign's there, but anyway, it's just a trail sign. Anyway, we are coming up to the end of our hour. First off, you know, before we close it off, I want to, you know, thank you very much for being with us today. And this is
fabulous conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, part of you also were a kind of a guinea pig for us, rather than doing a presentation, to have more of a, you know, back and forth. I think I love the interaction. So I'm thinking that
I really did too. Yeah,
this is maybe something that we do going forward. I am going to end the recording here. So let's just, if I can find the stop button. There we go.